The ACT writing section is changing starting in the fall of 2015. It's a pretty significant change. In the past, the ACT would give a prompt which asked students to take a stand on a two-sided issue. For instance, here's a typical prompt. Notice how it's primarily an either-or prompt. Either you are for teachers being able to teach this book, or you're against it. There's little room in the middle, and you would have to invent a new ball game in order to find that middle ground. They pretty much funnel you into one argument or the other, and the usual way to set this one up is to have your thesis state your side, and then build at least two body paragraphs to support it. If there's a third body paragraph, then it usually states an argument from the other side, and then refutes it. The new writing test is not like that. Here's an example prompt from the new test. This one's a little bit different. Let's notice what is different here. First, there are not the two clean sides, but rather they give us three options to discuss. Granted, perspectives 2 and 3 both speak more favorably about automation than perspective number 1 does, but even within 2 and 3 there's a little difference. 2 seems focused more on economics and efficiency, while number 3 seems a little more focused on what a liberation this is for the human soul and spirit. Let's also notice that the task is a little different too. We have more verbs. We are to write a unified, coherent essay, evaluate multiple perspectives, analyze and evaluate the perspectives, state and develop our own perspective, explain how our perspective relates to those given, and support our ideas with logical reasoning and detailed persuasive examples. I counted 8 verbs there. I like that last part. They used to tell us to use specific reasons and examples, but now we want detailed, persuasive, and logical ideas. Nice. Now, some things have not changed about the writing portion of the test. You still need an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You'll still need a thesis, and you still need to support your ideas and write cleanly. The ACT people are still going to grade you on 4 items: ideas and analysis, development and support, organization, and language use. Ideas and analysis looks at how complex your argument is. Development and support looks at what kinds of examples you use to help illustrate your ideas. Organization refers to how well it all fits together, and language use is about how cleanly you wrote and with what level of sophistication in your word choice. So even though their question format has changed, they're still evaluating your work on the same things that they have looked at for years. Now, at the heart of all this is still the question of what do we think about the topic. So let's set aside all that stuff for a minute and think, what do I think about automation? Take a minute, think about it, and I would like for you to write a sentence or two that shares some of your thoughts. Go ahead and pause me and bring me back when you're ready. Okay, we're back. Hopefully you got down a thought or two to go along with the topic. Let's agree on a couple of things. First, we're not going to merely repeat the same thing they have given us for one of the perspectives. So even if I really agree with perspective 3, I have to be able to put it in my own words. And secondly, let's agree that sophistication of language is desirable. It's not enough for me to say that perspective 3 is good. It's not enough for me to say that automation is nice. If I can find a more sophisticated set of words than good or nice or really keen, then I am a little better off. I would also like for us to agree on one other thing. Freshman year, your social studies teachers taught you to write a thesis sentence that started with the word although. The idea was that starting the sentence that way made you address multiple points of view. Let's do the same thing here. I would like us to agree that starting your thesis sentence with although forces you to recognize the other side of the issue, and it creates more complexity for the thesis sentence. And you do remember what a thesis is, right? It's the 1 or maybe 2 sentences around which we build the whole argument. It goes at or towards the end of our introductory paragraph. And for this type of essay, let's make it start with although. Now, hopefully you have the example essay that goes with this prompt. Take a moment to read through the first paragraph of this example. It starts with, as technology improves. Pause me while you do that. Now this is from the ACT website, and they offered this example as a 6 on their 6-point scale. In other words, it's what they're looking for. The first paragraph is the intro, and you can see it ends with a sentence that starts with although. It looks as though they basically agree with perspective number 1, but notice how they bring in the idea from perspective number 2. The intro is short. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it other than to introduce the topic and then lead to our although statement. Now, take a moment to read through the second paragraph. You pause me while you do that. So let's notice how this one works. Did you notice how they are working with the although part of that thesis? Even though they ultimately sided against automation, this paragraph puts forth arguments in favor of it and in praise of what mass production can do. They're also freely talking about perspectives 2 and perspective 3 and calling them such. So let's say that it will be okay to name the perspectives by number as you make your way through. And let's notice that they're making use of a topic sentence. As machines increasingly perform all our basic tasks, society is able to produce more. Now that's a big, broad, general claim that they're making, and then they go about using smaller, specific examples to help illustrate it. And that set of examples all revolves around the cotton gin. And that's what we're looking for, that you can take a big, nebulous idea and relate specific, concrete, factual examples to it. Good writing takes ideas and points out the reality of them. Now, the question's bound to arise, how did they know all that stuff about Eli Whitney and the cotton gin? I mean, they know that cotton production increased by 10 times the previous amount, and they know all about short staple cotton, whatever that is. How'd they know all that? My answer is, I don't know. Maybe they read a lot. Maybe they did a report recently for an American history class. Maybe they're related to Eli Whitney. But here's my point. Planning and organizing are nice. Having an although thesis is nice. But another component of the essay is the thoughts that you have to offer. And I'm hoping that with a prompt like this, you found yourself thinking of examples from your own life that you'd be able to talk about. Maybe you've noticed how you don't have to talk to a person when you buy groceries. Or maybe you've noticed how you communicate better with your friends through emojis rather than actual conversations. Maybe there is stuff in books that you have read in your English classes, or people and places that you have studied in your social studies classes. Part of what will make your essay a good essay is that you have knowledge of what goes on in the world. So part of preparing for the exam involves reading the paper, watching the news, and being knowledgeable about the kinds of things that happen in the world around you. So, let's pause me for a minute while you look over the third paragraph. Now here we are again. And I'm noticing that again, feel free to name perspective number 1 as perspective number 1, and then in this paragraph they are giving room for their own side of the argument. It corresponds with the part of the thesis after the although part. Now, the one thing I do not like about this one is that the stuff they share is not as factual as the stuff they shared in the earlier paragraph. We don't have as many actual facts. Instead, we have these hypothetical situations with a boss who evaluates people not as humans but as producers and so on. We get the idea across, but I'd like us to notice that it is not as concrete and specific as the previous paragraph. But the big thing to notice is that the organization works, and this one follows through on the rest of the thesis and acts as a contrast to the earlier paragraph. Now, we can't say much about that last paragraph, can we? It's pretty short, and we're used to a conclusion being longer. I think this is their way of letting us know it's okay not to have a lengthy conclusion. We might be pressed for time, and we'd rather have a strong middle than a bulky ending. I'd also like to point out that the concluding sentence they have is in a way similar to our thesis. It doesn't start with although, but it does start with an adverb structure, and it pretty much restates what the thesis said. So let's make this a rule, that at the end we're going to restate our thesis, preferably in different words, but still with an adverb structure at the beginning. You might also be saying, where's the third body paragraph? There isn't one, is there? Don't feel obligated to have 5. 4 will do. 1 for the intro, 1 for the although part, 1 for the part after although, and 1 to finish. And make sure that we have depth and actual factual items in the body paragraphs. Now, there are a number of things we haven't covered, and for our time's sake, I don't think we can cover them all. But it's worth thinking about how you will budget your time on the test. You have 40 minutes for the writing part. I would spend a good 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning planning and thinking. I would spend a good 20 to 25 minutes writing, and then I would be sure to leave myself a little bit of time, another 5 or 10 minutes at the end, for proofreading and checking to make sure that what I have said is what I want to say. Often people do not leave time for themselves at the end, so make sure you give yourself a few moments to check over your work. So, this has been a quick overview of what to expect from the ACT writing test. Please know that the question format has changed, and if you're taking the test starting in the fall of 2015, you won't have the simple two-sided approach that they used to have for years. We're still writing an essay, we still have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's not necessarily 5-paragraph. And let's make the promise to have a thesis that starts with although. That will give you something around which you can shape the middle paragraphs. And finally, for the content of the essay, spend time noticing things about the world around you. Sometimes we notice things, sometimes it's worth it. If you want more practice, visit your guidance counselor in Student Services, spend some time on the Career Cruising website in the LMC, or come on by Room 2000 to pay me a visit.